The 23rd of May. I'm Stephen Ridgway. Capita is in trouble again. I think we remember from, it was March this year, that at least, a small percentage of Capita's server estate was compromised, but that small percentage included the pension information of various Capita's customers and clients, including Marks and Spencer and Diego, who are the company that owns brands like Guinness and Gordon's Gin and Johnnie Walker, among others. So, that was in, I think, March. There is increasing information now coming out about a data leak related to UK city councils, city and districts and councils. Colchester, Coventry, Ardor and Worthing, Rochford, Derby, and South Staffordshire have all have so far acknowledged that they may have been swept up in this. It turns out to be an insecure AWS bucket, which has been sat on the internet in AWS for, we're not quite sure how long. Data pertaining to financial years, at least in Colchester, from the financial years 1920 and 2021, which is, considering that the council holds all sorts of financial information, potentially quite damaging, certainly damaging for Capita. I mean, Capita provide back-end services to a vast number of organisations, certainly in the UK, probably globally as well. So not looking good there. So if you live in one of those areas affected, it is possible that some of your data may have escaped. Your council should be doing the right things to minimize the damage, and perhaps might be worth checking on their websites to see what their statements are about this stuff. Google is launching a bug bounty program for Android applications. So they are interested in vulnerabilities in Google Play services, AGSA, which is Android's Google Quick Search Box, I believe, Google Chrome, Google Cloud Console, Gmail, and Chrome Remote Desktop. The payments that they are going to, that they've published that they will pay out for vulnerabilities range from an arbitrary code execution with remote and no user interaction, for which they'll pay out $30,000. At the other end of the scale, there are so the categories of vulnerability are arbitrary code execution, theft of sensitive data, and other vulnerabilities. And so at the bottom of the scale, under the other vulnerabilities, a vulnerability where the attacker must be on the same network, for example, man-in-the-middle attacks, $750. So interesting. Interesting to see that they are now opening this up. Not a bad thing. Android has had a bit of a hard time. Certainly over the last couple of weeks, we've spoken a bit about vulnerabilities of various kinds within Android. Google do take it seriously, so it is good to see that they're moving in that direction. It is, I think, probably curious to see how much they're thinking of paying out for what sorts of vulnerabilities. The entire bug bounty industry can be a little bit dubious. We're aware of people who tout vulnerabilities around to see who they can get the highest money from. But equally, so long as these things are being found and are being addressed, it's better than being left vulnerable, I guess. So there's an interesting one. If you're into bug bounties, there are some new areas to have a look for vulnerabilities in. And then finally from me today, Meta, as in the people that own Facebook and Instagram, have been fined $1.3 billion for violating the European Union's GDPR regulations. GDPR, if you're in Europe or the UK, you're well aware of the challenges of GDPR and how to handle personal information. In the US, the approach is very different. Government has more rights for interception, and commercial organizations have fewer restrictions around selling on the data they hold about you. So a long time ago now, basically around 2016, the US and the EU came up with an agreement that previously there'd been things like safe harbor. They came up with Privacy Shield, which was an agreement that US organizations could self-certify into, which provided protections for the data of EU citizens. Well, that has been struck down by the European Court of Justice, and at the moment there is no replacement available. There's a link that explains in the article that we'll post. There's a link in the article that takes you to something that explains what Privacy Shield is, and it also there are further information around what the issues are with Privacy Shield and why the EU has struck it down. However, the difficulty is that there are a lot of multinational companies, including Meta, that still rely illegally on the former agreement because mainly there isn't anything else out there right now. It is an absolutely astronomical fine. The previous largest fine was for Amazon, which was fined around 800 million in 2021 for data protection violations. Interesting to see that the regulators have got some teeth, but it is also it's also interesting to see that European Court of Justice can leave global business with no means of legally transferring data from the UK to UK EU to the US. So expect challenges and expect things to happen. I believe that there are negotiations underway to come up with improvements or replacements for Privacy Shield. So this stuff will be sorted out. But in the meantime, multinational companies are potentially trading at risk if they are transferring EU citizen data outside of the EU. Well, that's everything from me for today. Hope you have a good day, and I'll speak to you all again tomorrow.